Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about the driving instructor course, sometimes referred to as the ITC, Instructor Training Course. This is the course that teaches you how to be a driving instructor. Had a comment from Sonia in New Zealand, and she was embarking on taking the driving instruction course and doing the practical test there. She wanted some tips and some information about the course. Now, I've taken 3 courses. I took the driving instructor course in Ontario for passenger vehicles, which is broken down into 2 different segments, the 3 weeks for in-vehicle and 3 weeks for in-classroom. As well, I did the air brakes and commercial vehicles in Ontario as well. When I moved to the state of Victoria in Australia, I did the course there for passenger vehicles, and when I moved back to British Columbia here in Canada, I did all of the requirements, all of the tests to get my license back in British Columbia. I didn't take the course here, but I did take all of the tests because it's fairly stringent here in British Columbia. Just know that if you come here to become a driving instructor. And essentially, I can give you 3 main parts of these driving instruction courses that will apply to different countries, and most of the Commonwealth countries, I would suggest, and as well in the United States. It's a little bit different in Europe. I know they're much more stringent in Europe and they're a lot more intense. So this may or may not apply to Europe. But for the most part, most driving instruction courses can be broken down into 3 main components. One is you have to learn how to drive according to the parameters of a road test. Yes, you have to obey the speed limit and stop at the correct position at stop signs. The next one is you have to learn how to teach. So you have to write lesson plans. You have to know how to sequence the slow speed maneuvers that are required for the purposes of a road test. And the third part is the knowledge bit. And all of the knowledge bit comes out of the driver's manual. So the driver's manual is going to be your next best friend. And if you have any questions that you cannot find the answer in the driver's manual, the Highway Traffic Act will be your next best friend. And most of those pieces of legislation are available online. So you could simply Google that, look that piece of legislation up, and then search the piece of legislation. So it makes it a lot easier than the old, big tomes. Tome is a fancy word for huge book. So those are the 3 major components. We're going to give you some more detail about that today. So stick around. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Welcome back. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you about the ITC course, the Instructor Trainer course. This is the course for you to become a driving instructor. And we are going to give you a general overview that is broken down into 3 major components. The first one is learning how to drive. The other one is teaching how to teach the new student how to drive and prepare for his or her license. And the final part of that is knowledge, the knowledge base that you need to accumulate for the purposes of teaching a new driver how to pass a road test. Because one of the points that I will make, and one of the points that I have said previously about teaching new drivers how to drive, you're not teaching them how to drive. You're teaching them how to pass a road test. This is what driving instructors do. And I know that traffic safety professionals and driving instructors in the industry are going to take umbrage when I say that, but that is in fact the reality. And when I did my driving instructor course, the in-car portion of it in Ontario, in Ottawa with Chris Doherty, that was the first thing he said to me. As a driving instructor, you are not going to make these new drivers safer. You are not going to reduce the risk of them being in a crash. But maybe one thing that you teach them is going to protect them and keep them safe one night on their way home. But for the most part, you're not teaching them how to drive. You're not going to make them safer. You're simply teaching them how to pass a road test. So the 3 categories: you have to learn how to drive, you have to accumulate a knowledge base, and you have to learn how to teach the new driver how to teach. And what I'm going to do is break it down into those 3 categories, and then each one of those categories I'm going to talk to you in terms of the driving task. The driving task, there's another video here on the channel, I'll put a card up here for you in the corner, on the driving task. And the driving task is the driver, the vehicle, light, weather, road, and traffic. And those are the 6 aspects of the driving task that you have to teach a new driver. Now, most of what you're going to be teaching a new driver will be involved in 4 of those components. Light and weather, you're not going to be doing a whole lot of that because you're not going to be teaching them how to drive at night. You're not going to be teaching them how to drive in inclement weather. And most of what you're going to be teaching them about weather will depend on the season in which you're driving. If you're in a country that doesn't get winter, you're really not going to be teaching them about winter driving. So those of you within some proximity of the equator, you're not going to be teaching them how to do winter driving. But for the most part, you will be focused on the driver. How does the driver learn, and what are the characteristics of the many different drivers that are on the road, the many different vehicles that are on the road, and the vehicles that make up traffic. You're also going to be teaching them about traffic, and you're going to be teaching them about different kinds of roadways, residential, suburban, multi-lane roadways, complex intersections. And a lot of the work that you're going to be doing is at controlled intersections with traffic lights, stop sign, yield signs. That is going to be your work. Finally, with the new driver, the other aspect of it is slow speed maneuvers. Most of what you're going to be doing for a road test is slow speed maneuvers. Parallel parking, two-point reverse turn, U-turns, reverse stall parking. These are the things that new drivers hire driving instructors to teach them. Despite the fact that it's only about 1/8 of what the actual driving test is about, that's what gives new drivers the most trouble. So without further ado, let's get started with what you have to do, and the first one's going to be driving. To teach is to learn, and you need to learn how to drive for the purposes of a road test. This is the first component of the ITC course, is learning how to drive and put in place all the criteria that is required for passing a road test. You, as the driving instructor, need to be able to demonstrate and be a role model for new drivers learning how to drive. And all of that can be somewhat difficult because you have to keep both hands on the steering wheel, you have to drive the posted speed limit, you have to stop at the correct position at stop signed intersections, you have to stop at the correct position in traffic. There are many criteria that you need to have and put in place in order to become a driving instructor. And you are working against social driving, the forces of social driving that impact how traffic interacts every day on our roadways. And until you begin to recognize the forces of social driving, you just simply cannot even begin to understand how much that impacts our daily driving. And if you want to see a good example of social driving, which has been around since the beginning of the motor car, Disney's 1950s Motor Mania, where Goofy starts off the day as passive Mr. Walker, and then Mr. Walker gets into his motor car and undergoes this Jekyll and Hyde transformation where he becomes Mr. Wheeler, who is an egomaniac behind the wheel and exhibits numerous displays of road rage. And it's not quite like that in terms of social driving, but in terms of social driving, we don't drive the posted speed limit, we don't stop at the correct position at stop signed intersections, we don't have both hands on the steering wheel, and I can go on verbatim about all of the things that we do in terms of social driving. And the other thing about learning how to drive for the purposes of passing a road test is that it is not simply a cerebral exercise. It's not something that you're going to put in your brain and learn. You also have to retrain your body, because your body operates the primary controls of the vehicle. Information is received, and then you have to change how your body reacts to that. So when you see a stop sign, now you are collecting information and processing information about, okay, do I have a stop line? If I don't have a stop line, do I have a crosswalk line? If I don't have a crosswalk line, then I stop at the edge of the road where the two roads meet. And where do the two roads meet? You're trying to find that information as well. So there's a lot more information that's now being processed because you are stepping up in terms of the level at which you're driving. And so you have to retrain your body. So it's not just a cerebral exercise of learning how to drive for the purposes of passing a road test. It's also a kinesthetic exercise because you're retraining your body how to do something. And retraining muscle memory takes a lot of energy, and it can take a significant amount of time in order to be able to do that. And if you watch my videos here, you'll note, for me especially, trying to keep two hands on the steering wheel while I'm driving and trying to talk, a lot of times that is almost an impossible challenge for me because I talk with my hands a lot. If you watch a lot of my videos, you'll realize that. And it is incredibly difficult for me to keep my hands bolted on the steering wheel. As well, I too succumb to social driving, and when I drive my own personal car, I don't drive with both hands on the steering wheel, and I would suspect that most people who drive their cars do not drive with both hands on the steering wheel. So your first aspect of the ITC course of becoming a driving instructor is learning how to drive for the purposes of passing a road test. The second aspect of the ITC course, learning to be a driving instructor, is the teaching aspect of teaching new drivers how to drive. And this can be a bit challenging, especially if the new driver that you're teaching how to drive, if English is not their first language. And for those of you in larger urban centers, this is going to be more of a challenge because you're going to encounter more people whose first language is not English. And so therefore that could be one of the difficulties to teaching a new driver how to drive. For the purposes of the course that you're going to be taking, you're going to be doing a lot of lesson plans. You're going to be writing out lesson plans, and I'll put a link down here in the comment section to a lesson plan and a sample lesson plan over at my website. You can follow that link and see what a lesson plan is. Actually, most lesson plans simply have a title. They have an objective of what you're going to teach the student and what the student is going to be able to do at the end of the lesson. There's going to be a time allocation for however long the lesson is and how much time you're going to spend towards whatever you're going to be teaching the student. For example, if you're teaching them a 3-point turn, you may allocate 35 minutes to that task of teaching them how to do a 3-point turn. It's going to have an introduction where you're going to explain to the student what he or she is going to do. You're going to do a demonstration of that technique, and then there's going to be a body where they're going to be doing the technique, and you're going to be working with them and walking them through that procedure. And then at the end, there's going to be a debrief. You're going to give them feedback of what is working for them, what is not working. You're going to try and fine-tune the technique, and as well, you're going to tell them what needs to be further work and what they can do for homework when they're working with their mentors in terms of working on the 3-point turn. So that's the lesson plan. The other thing that you're going to need to do in terms of teaching is you're going to need to learn to sequence all of the slow speed maneuvers that you're going to need to teach the new driver. Slow speed maneuvers being that of 3-point turns, 2-point reverse turns, reverse stall parking, parallel parking, all of the maneuvers that the new driver has to know for the purposes of a road test. And you need to know these off by heart because, as I said in the introduction, even though 7/8 of the road test is in a forward motion, most of what you're going to be doing with new students is you're going to be working with that 1/8, the slow speed maneuvers that they're going to have difficulty with, and you're going to have to teach them how to do the slow speed maneuvers. Now, fortunately for you, you have the Cole's Notes version, which is all the videos here on my channel, which goes over the sequencing of these different slow speed maneuvers that they have to do for the purposes of a road test. Finally, the last piece of teaching the new driver is that you need to somehow figure out what their experience is in life. If they are a video gamer, if they ride bicycles, if they play football, whatever their life experiences is, you need to try and take that life experience and you need to try and dovetail it with what you were teaching them. The last aspect of being a driving instructor is that there has been an influx of this move towards coaching and working with the student, and you and the student sit down and have a nice cozy relationship about what you're doing. Yes, you want to have a cordial relationship with the student, but there simply isn't enough time in North America and Australia and other Commonwealth countries. Most students just come to you for the minimum amount of lessons that they can take and get away with in order to pass the road test. So essentially what they're setting up is this novice expert relationship between you and the student simply wants the information from you that is going to help him or her pass his or her road test. Now, that coaching methodology or ideology has come out of Europe, and in Europe they have much more extensive training programs for new drivers that they have to undergo. So that coaching theory works in Europe, but it doesn't work in North America, unfortunately, and you're still going to be working on that sort of novice expert relationship with your students. Now, I am saying that yes, you have to be nice to them and you have to consult them in terms of what they're doing and those types of things, but for the most part, it's really going to be you as the expert giving them the information they need in order to pass a road test. Now, last piece of advice in terms of teaching: when you go out with the student and you start on the first lesson, always take them to a controlled area. Never trust the student in what he or she says in terms of the amount of experience they have in driving. Always, always, always take them to a controlled area, introduce them to the vehicle, get them to do slow speed maneuvers, and to demonstrate to you, in fact, that they can control the vehicle before you take them out on a roadway. The first lesson as well, in terms of setting up the vehicle, getting them used to the vehicle and familiar with the primary controls, is an assessment for learning. You are assessing their ability to learn and take on knowledge and their ability to operate the vehicle. And lastly, most of what you're going to be doing is building self-confidence. And you may also have to work with the mentors who are working with the new drivers and coach them and give them information about how they can help the new driver to improve for the purposes of a road test. The last major component of the ITC course of learning how to become a driving instructor is the knowledge base, the amount of knowledge that you need to know to teach other students how to drive. You need to understand defensive driving, and when it comes to defensive driving, they've made that somewhat difficult because we start with the Smith Space Cushion System, which technically we're not supposed to be teaching anymore because it's all copyrighted, because unfortunately Harold Smith passed away and his family took it over and realized that there was a great deal of money to be made in that. So unfortunately they've copyrighted that and can no longer be taught. But for the most part, most driving instructors still teach those same 5 tenets of the Smith Space Cushion System. And I'll leave a link down in the comments here to the Smith Space Cushion System. You can watch that over at my website. The next thing you need to do is you need to know all the signs, you need to know all the traffic rules, and you need to know all of the information that is required for a new driver to pass a knowledge test at the licensing center. So you need to know all of that information as well. So the driving manual in your jurisdiction is going to become your next best friend, because you are going to need to understand every aspect of that driving manual in order to give that information to new drivers who are learning how to drive, because they have to go on and pass a road test. And probably one of the most complex aspects of any driving manual is teaching new students right of way. When do they have the right of way at intersections? When do they have the right of way when they're turning left, when they're turning right? And this is one of the aspects of driving that you will spend a great deal of time on, is teaching new drivers the right of way. And remember, the right of way is always given, it's never taken. So you can teach students this as well in terms of right of way. You can be right or you can be dead right. So are you going to continue to go even though you've got the right of way, or are you going to back off because there's another vehicle there and there just isn't the space and safety margin for you to be able to proceed? So this is another aspect that you need to teach them. And there isn't a driver's manual that I have read that doesn't in some way try to shape new drivers' attitudes and behavior in terms of drugs and alcohol, speeding, road rage, all the types of issues that we have with modern traffic. And actually none of these issues are new. They've been around since the beginning of not only the motor car, but the beginning of traffic, period. So this is all of the information that you need to teach new drivers. Traffic laws, signs, the physics, defensive driving and whatnot. So this is the knowledge base that you're going to need to have to teach new drivers how to do this. And as well, all of that's going to dovetail with your lesson plans, because depending on where you're taking your driving instruction course to teach new drivers how to pass a road test, that knowledge base is also going to be part and parcel of the knowledge base that you're going to have to acquire in terms of how to teach a new driver and the characteristics of the new drivers. And we come back to the driving task, and all of this is going to fit under those subcategories of the driving task: the vehicle, the driver, the road, traffic, weather, and light. And all of that as well is going to factor into the knowledge base that you need to acquire for becoming a driving instructor. And because the course is such a short duration, there's a lot of stuff going on all at the same time, and you are going to really feel kind of exhausted by the end of that 3-week or 4-week or 6-week course, however long that course is that you're taking for the purposes of becoming a driving instructor. So the knowledge base and the driving manual is going to become your next best friend. Now, if the information that you're looking for is not in the driver's manual, go to the legislation, either the Highway Traffic Act or the Motor Vehicle Act. Either one of those pieces of legislation will have the exact information that you're looking, because it's a lot more detailed and there's a lot more minutia, fine detailed information that you may be required to know for the purposes of teaching new drivers how to pass a road test. For example, you don't have to wear a seatbelt when you're reversing a car. Now, if you want to find that information, you're going to find that information in a driver's manual, but you will find that in the Highway Traffic Act or in a Motor Vehicle Act legislation. And all of this legislation is available online. It's public use, so you can simply Google it and you should be able to find it online, and then you can simply just do a search on that piece of legislation and find the information that you're looking for. So your last bit of information is you need to know how to do that. And this is the knowledge base that you're going to have to acquire for the purposes of becoming a driving instructor. Review of the instructor trainer course, the ITC course to become a driving instructor. I've taken 3 of these driving instructor courses. I took one in Ontario, Canada for both passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles to teach people how to drive lorries and tractor trailers and buses. And again, I took the course again when I moved to Victoria, Australia, because I wanted to be a driving instructor, but in fact I actually went off and drove coaches for Greyhound, which was, you know, good fun and a great learning experience to become a bus driver. And then when I moved back to British Columbia, Canada, I again took the instructor's course. I didn't take the instructor's course when I moved to British Columbia. Actually, I in fact challenged the course here to get my license back to teach both commercial drivers and passenger vehicles and as well motorcycles. So I have taken these courses and have a good overview of what the courses are about, and the courses can be broken down into 3 broad categories, and those 3 broad categories are learning how to drive for the purposes of a road test, overcoming all of the forces of social driving that most of us succumb to when we're driving, not driving the posted speed limit, not stopping at the correct position at stop sign intersections, driving over painted islands, following too close to other traffic, not stopping at the right position in traffic when traffic is stopped. All of those are characteristics and traits of social driving, and you will have to overcome that. And part of that learning is not only a brain thing, a cerebral learning, but it is also a body learning, that you have to retrain your body how to drive and drive according to the speed limit. And that is a fair bit of a challenge at the beginning, because all the other traffic is just tearing past you, because we know that the traffic flow drives 5 to 10 kilometers or 3 to 8 miles an hour faster than what the posted speed limit is. So that's going to be probably your biggest challenge in terms of the ITC course. The next part of the ITC course is teaching new drivers how to drive. So you're going to have to do lesson plans. You're going to have to write lesson plans out. They have to have an objective. They have to have an overview. And when you get with a new student, you're going to have to do an assessment for learning. And again, the golden rule of teaching a new driver on the first lesson: always, always, always take them to a closed circuit space, away from traffic. Always take them someplace where you can potentially control the vehicle and start them off with slow speed maneuvers, because part of that first lesson is an assessment for learning, determining the student's ability to drive and how much information that they can take on board, and whether that they're you know, they're really nervous, and you're going to have to build their self-confidence. And I will just say that in terms of gender, women need a lot more confidence building than men do. So you need to know that as well, that it's about building self-confidence. And I just say that a lot of men too need building self-confidence, and a lot of this is what this is about, because there's just so much going on with driving, that it's not just about teaching driving, but it's also about building self-confidence with these people. And that's what you're going to have to do. And unfortunately, the time that you have with these people is very limited, and you have a limited impact on what they're doing. So you're not going to teach them how to drive. You're going to teach them how to pass a road test. The last part is accumulating your knowledge base. The driver's manual in your jurisdiction is going to be your next best friend. You need to understand and comprehend all of the information in the driver's manual, and you have to be able to impart that in a student, both for the purposes of a knowledge test and for the purposes of a road test. So traffic signs, right of way, complex intersections, all of this information. And then of course, driver's manuals inevitably always try to impact attitude of new drivers and young drivers, but that is difficult. And as well, drinking and driving and drugs and those types of things are all in the driver's manual. And again, as I said in the body of this video, is that the information that you're looking for is not in the driver's manual. Go to the Highway Traffic Act or the Motor Vehicle Act, and that will give you the information that you're looking for. And if not, try Google, and as well, just, you know, go on to the traffic safety websites and other websites, and you'll be able to find that information that you need to know. Finally, with the knowledge base that you need to impart to students, break it down into must know, should know, and could know. And of course, that's going to take some experience in terms of your ability to figure out what is the information that they absolutely need to know. And finally, the final point is, for the most part, you are not teaching these new drivers how to drive. You're teaching them how to pass a road test. And most of what you're going to be doing as a driving instructor is teaching them slow speed maneuvers. As I've said before, 7/8 of the road test is in a forward motion. 1/8 of it is slow speed maneuvers, 3-point turns, parallel parking, U-turns, 2-point reverse turns, reverse stall parking. And this is most of what gives new drivers difficulty, and you're going to have to teach a lot of slow speed maneuvers. And again, you don't have time, but try to impart on the new driver and on the mentors that if they go out to a parking lot and they practice these slow speed maneuvers, it's going to impact their overall driving, and they are going to learn how to drive and have better control of the vehicle much more quickly if they spend the time doing the fundamentals and working with the primary controls. That's going to be your challenge. Question for the driving instructors out there: what information would you give to new driving instructors who are taking the ITC course? Do you have any tips or advice in terms of starting out as a career as a driving instructor? Leave a comment down in the comment section there. All of that helps out the new driving instructors embarking on a new career. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Thanks very much for watching. If you like what you see here, share, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section. As well, hit that thumbs up button. Check out all the videos here on the channel if you're working towards a license or starting a career as a truck or bus driver or a driving instructor. Lots of great information here as well. Good information over at my website. And online courses that you can purchase. Stick around to the end of the video, funny bits and links to the other videos and to my website. Thanks again for watching. Good luck on your road test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now. Have a kumbaya relationship with your students. I can hear you yakking away over there, guys. All right.